The crystalline spires of the Zephyrian capital stretched into the violet sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the twin suns that bathed the planet in perpetual twilight. Princess Lirali stood at the observation deck of the Imperial Palace. Her elongated fingers pressed against the transparent aluminum barrier as she watched the human transport vessel descend through the atmospheric layers. She had never seen a human ship before. The crude angular design looked primitive compared to the flowing organic curves of Zephyrian vessels, where their ships resembled living creatures swimming through space. This human craft appeared to be nothing more than a metal box with engines strapped to its sides. The princess wondered how such an inelegant design could have carried these strange beings across the vast distances between star systems. "Your Highness?" came a melodic voice behind her. Lirali turned to see her advisor, Counselor Viridian, approaching with measured steps. His silver robes rustled softly against the polished floor, and the bioluminescent patterns along his neck pulsed in a rhythm that indicated concern. "The human delegation has requested an immediate audience. Their translator claims it is a matter of utmost urgency." Lirali's own neck patterns flickered with curiosity mixed with disdain. Urgency? They have barely set foot on our world, and already they make demands. How typically human. She had heard stories about these creatures from the Outer Rim territories, short-lived, aggressive, and lacking the refined telepathic abilities that civilized species possessed. They relied on crude verbal communication and physical gestures, like primitive animals. The great hall of the palace had been prepared for the meeting according to traditional Zephyrian customs. Floating light spheres cast a gentle blue glow throughout the chamber, while the walls displayed slowly shifting patterns that represented the history of their civilization. The princess took her place on the crystal throne, its faceted surface amplifying her natural telepathic aura to demonstrate her royal authority to any visiting dignitaries who possessed even basic mental sensitivity. When the human delegation entered, Lirali was struck by how different they appeared from the holographic records she had studied. They were shorter than expected, their skin lacking any luminescent qualities, and their movements seemed jerky and uncoordinated. The leader of the group, according to her briefing materials, was named Ambassador Marcus Chen. He appeared older than the others, with gray streaking through his dark hair and lines etched around his eyes that spoke of a life lived under stress. What surprised her most was his posture. Unlike the other humans who seemed nervous and constantly looked around the chamber with obvious awe, this Marcus Chen stood straight and calm. His gaze met hers directly, without the submissive lowering of eyes that she expected from representatives of lesser species. There was something in his expression that she found difficult to interpret. "Your Royal Highness," Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic design. "I am Ambassador Chen of the Human Colonial Federation. I come before you not in celebration, but with grave news that affects both our peoples." The princess felt a ripple of surprise through her telepathic senses. The human's emotional signature was unlike anything she had encountered before. Where most species projected either fear, ambition, or calculated diplomacy in her presence, this human emanated something else entirely. It was steady, unwavering, and carried undertones of genuine concern that seemed to encompass more than just his own species' welfare. "Speak your news." "Ambassador," Lirali replied, her voice enhanced by the throne's resonance chambers to carry the proper imperial authority. "Though I wonder what urgent matters could possibly concern both our civilizations when this is our first official contact." Marcus stepped forward slightly, a movement that caused several Zephyrian guards to tense. But the human seemed oblivious to their reaction, focused entirely on his message. "Princess, our deep space monitoring stations have detected a massive fleet movement in the Andromeda Void. The vessels do not match any known configuration in our databases, and their trajectory suggests they are heading for this sector of the galaxy." The princess felt her neck patterns dim slightly. The Andromeda Void was a region of space that all civilized species avoided, a dark expanse where several exploration fleets had vanished without trace over the millennia. Unknown vessels could mean many things, Ambassador. Pirates, perhaps, or merchants using unregistered ship designs. "With respect, Your Highness, these are not pirates." Marcus activated a small device he carried, projecting a three-dimensional hologram into the air between them. The image showed sleek black vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved in perfect formation, their numbers reaching into the thousands. We estimate this fleet to be approximately 50 times larger than anything in our combined naval forces. Their ships emit energy signatures that suggest technology far beyond what either of our civilizations possesses. Lyrelei leaned forward slightly, studying the projection. She reached out with her telepathic abilities, trying to sense any deception in the human's mind, but found his thoughts surprisingly opaque. Humans, she remembered, had natural mental barriers that made telepathic reading difficult. Still, what she could perceive suggested he was telling the truth as he understood it. Even if such a threat exists, she said carefully, why bring this information to us? Surely humanity would benefit from seeing potential rivals eliminated by these mysterious invaders. For the first time since entering the chamber, Marcus smiled. It was not the calculating expression she expected, but something warmer and more complex. Princess, I've spent my career studying galactic politics and interspecies relations. I've seen what happens when civilizations face existential threats alone. No matter how advanced or powerful a single species believes itself to be, some challenges require cooperation to overcome. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Lyrelei had been raised to believe in Zephyrian superiority, taught that their ancient civilization and advanced telepathic abilities made them naturally suited to lead other species. The idea that humans barely emerged from their home system would propose an alliance of equals was almost insulting, yet something in the human ambassador's demeanor gave her pause. He spoke not as a supplicant seeking protection, but as an equal offering partnership. The confidence in his stance, the directness of his gaze, the steady emotional signature she could barely perceive through his mental barriers, all suggested a depth of character that contradicted everything she had been told about his species. You propose an alliance, she said slowly, based on the threat of an unknown enemy that may or may not pose a danger to our worlds. I propose we share information and prepare for the possibility that our civilizations may need to stand together, Marcus replied. Because from what I've learned about the Zephyrian Empire, and what I hope you'll learn about humanity, we're both too valuable to lose. The War Council chamber deep within the Imperial Palace had not been used for 3 centuries. Princess Lyrelei walked through its ancient corridors, her footsteps echoing off walls carved with the battle histories of her ancestors. The bioluminescent veins running through the stone pulsed with a faint red glow, responding to her elevated stress levels as she made her way to the meeting that would determine the fate of both their civilizations. 3 days had passed since Ambassador Chen's initial warning, and the reports from their long-range sensors had confirmed humanity's dire predictions. The unknown fleet was indeed massive, and its course would bring it into Zephyrian space within 2 standard months. What troubled Lyrelei most was not just the size of the approaching armada, but the complete absence of any communication attempts from these mysterious vessels. In all recorded galactic history, first contact situations involve some form of communication, even if hostile. Species announced their intentions, made demands, or at minimum responded to hails. These ships maintained absolute silence while moving with a precision that suggested advanced artificial intelligence, or a hive-mind mentality that chilled even the most experienced. Zephyrian military analyst, Ambassador Chen was already waiting in the council chamber when she arrived, standing before a massive holographic display that showed the current positions of both fleets. He had spent the previous days working alongside Zephyrian scientists and military advisors, sharing human tactical data and learning about Zephyrian defensive capabilities. What they had discovered was sobering. Princess, Marcus said as she approached, his tone more informal than their first meeting but still respectful. I've been reviewing the combined defensive analysis with Admiral Kethvar. The situation is more challenging than either of our species initially understood. Lyrelei nodded to Admiral Kethvar, the supreme commander of Zephyrian military forces. His ancient features bore the scars of battles fought across multiple star systems, and his telepathic signature carried the weight of centuries of military experience. If he was concerned, the situation was indeed grave. The enemy fleet's composition is unlike anything in our tactical databases, Admiral Kethvar communicated telepathically, his thoughts carrying undertones of professional admiration mixed with deep worry. Their vessels appear to be constructed from materials that absorb both energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. Our most powerful plasma cannons might as well be throwing pebbles at a neutron star. Marcus activated his portable hologram generator, overlaying human tactical assessments onto the Zephyrian military displays. Our weapons face the same limitations. However, we've identified potential weaknesses in their formation patterns. They move with mathematical precision, which suggests either computer control or a species that thinks collectively. Both scenarios present opportunities for exploitation. The princess studied the tactical data with growing amazement. Human military doctrine was completely different from Zephyrian strategies, yet somehow complementary. Where her people relied on superior technology and telepathic coordination to overwhelm enemies, humans had developed tactics based on unpredictability, individual initiative, and rapid adaptation to changing battlefield conditions. "You fight like chaos incarnate," Admiral Kethvar observed, his mental voice carrying what might have been approval. "Your battle records show human forces consistently defeating superior opponents through unconventional tactics and sheer determination." "It is most interesting." Marcus smiled at what he clearly recognized as a compliment. "Humans have a saying, if you find yourself in a fair fight, you didn't plan properly. We've learned to turn disadvantages into advantages and make our weaknesses into strengths. Against an enemy, this powerful conventional warfare won't be enough." The princess found herself studying the human ambassador with new eyes. Over the past 3 days, she had watched him work tirelessly alongside her people, sharing critical intelligence without apparent concern for humanity's strategic secrets. His species' willingness to reveal their military capabilities to potential future rivals demonstrated either remarkable stupidity or extraordinary courage. "There is something I must understand," Lyrelai said, her voice carrying the formal tones of royal inquiry. "Your species barely possesses interstellar travel. Your ships are primitive by our standards. Your weapons less advanced, your numbers fewer. You could flee to the far reaches of the galaxy and likely avoid this conflict entirely. Why do you insist on standing with us against this threat?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. When he spoke, his words carried a weight that resonated through the chamber's acoustic systems. "Princess, my grandfather fought in humanity's last global war. He told me stories about times when evil seemed overwhelming, when surrender would have been easier than resistance. He said that sometimes you don't fight because you think you can win. You fight because it's the right thing to do." Admiral Kethavar's telepathic signature flickered with surprise. "You would risk your entire species for principles." "We've learned something over our history," Marcus replied. "When good people stand together, even against impossible odds, amazing things can happen. When they stand alone, evil always wins." He gestured to the holographic display showing the approaching enemy fleet. "These ships, whatever controls them, they're heading for inhabited worlds. If we let them destroy the Zephyrian Empire, how long before they turn their attention to humanity? How long before they consume every free civilization in this galaxy?" The princess felt something shift in her understanding of these strange beings. She had been raised to view other species through the lens of utility and hierarchy, measuring their worth by their technology and telepathic abilities. But Marcus Chen represented something different, a form of strength that had nothing to do with advanced weapons or psychic powers. "Your proposal for joint operations," she said carefully. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Marcus activated a new set of tactical displays, showing proposed fleet formations that integrated both human and Zephyrian vessels. "Combined operations, your ships have superior firepower and defensive capabilities. Ours have speed and maneuverability. Your telepathic coordination allows for perfect unit cohesion. Our individual initiative creates unpredictable battlefield conditions that confuse enemy targeting systems." The tactical possibilities were intriguing. Zephyrian vessels could provide heavy support, while human ships conducted rapid strike operations. Telepathic communication could coordinate large-scale maneuvers, while human tactical creativity disrupted enemy formations. It was a combination that neither species could achieve alone. "There are risks," Admiral Kethvar noted. "Joint operations require absolute trust between commanders. A single betrayal or miscommunication could doom both fleets." "Which brings us to the real question," Marcus said, looking directly at Princess Lyrelai. "Are our species ready to trust each other completely? Because half measures won't work against this enemy. We either stand together as true allies, or we fall separately." The princess realized this was the moment of decision. Everything about her upbringing and cultural training told her to maintain Zephyrian independence, to view humans as temporary allies of convenience. But something deeper, an intuition that bypassed her logical mind, suggested that this strange human represented an opportunity that might not come again. Standing in that ancient war council chamber, surrounded by the battle histories of her ancestors, Princess Lyrelei made a choice that would reshape the destiny of two civilizations. Ambassador Chen, Admiral Kethvar, begin immediate preparations for joint fleet operations. If we are to face extinction, let us face it together. The Joint Command Center aboard the Zephyrian flagship Stellar Sovereign hummed with activity as representatives from both species worked side by side, preparing for the approaching battle. Princess Lyrelei stood before the main tactical display, watching real-time feeds from scout vessels as they monitored the enemy fleet's advance. The mysterious ships had maintained their relentless course and speed, showing no deviation or response to any communication attempts. Ambassador Chen moved between workstations with surprising ease, consulting with Zephyrian technicians and human engineers alike. His ability to bridge the communication gap between their species had proven invaluable during the integration process. Where telepathic Zephyrians sometimes became impatient with human verbal communication, Marcus seemed to understand both modes of interaction intuitively. Princess called out Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park, the human tactical officer assigned to the Joint Operations Team. We're receiving updated sensor data from the perimeter scouts. The enemy fleet has begun to spread into attack formation approximately 6 hours ahead of their projected arrival time. Lyrelei felt her neck patterns pulse with concern as she absorbed the tactical implications. They are moving faster than anticipated. Admiral Kethvar, what is our fleet status? The elderly Zephyrian admiral's thoughts carried undertones of grim satisfaction. All vessels are in position and weapon systems are fully charged. The integration training with human crews has exceeded expectations. Our telepathic network now includes human liaison officers who can coordinate with their ships in real time. What had emerged during the joint training exercises was fascinating from both a military and cultural perspective. Human crews, lacking telepathic abilities, had developed incredibly sophisticated electronic communication systems that could coordinate complex maneuvers without the psychic link that Zephyrians relied upon. When combined with telepathic coordination, the hybrid communication network created tactical awareness capabilities that neither species possessed alone. Marcus approached the command platform, his expression serious but determined. Princess, I need to discuss something with you privately. It concerns a tactical option that Admiral Kethvar and I have been developing, but it requires your specific authorization. Intrigued, Lyrelei followed him to a smaller observation chamber adjacent to the main command center. Through the transparent walls, she could see the combined fleet in formation. Human vessels positioned between larger Zephyrian ships like quick predators, hunting alongside powerful beasts. The enemy's formation pattern suggests they'll attempt to divide and conquer. Marcus began activating a holographic tactical display. They'll try to separate our forces and destroy them piecemeal. Standard defensive doctrine would call for maintaining tight formations to maximize mutual support. But you believe standard doctrine will fail against this enemy, the princess observed. Correct. Their technology is too advanced for conventional tactics. However, there's something in their movement patterns that suggests a critical weakness. They respond to threats with mathematical precision, always choosing the most efficient solution. That predictability can be exploited, but only through a strategy that goes against everything your military has been trained to do. Marcus highlighted sections of the enemy fleet on the hologram. We propose allowing them to divide our forces, but in a controlled manner. Small human squadrons will break formation and appear to flee in different directions. When the enemy pursues according to their predictable patterns, they'll be drawn into prepared ambush zones where your heavy ships will be waiting. Lyrelei studied the tactical plan with growing alarm. You are suggesting using human vessels as bait. The casualties would be enormous. The casualties would be certain if we fight conventionally, Marcus replied calmly. Princess, human history is full of situations where small groups accepted enormous risks to save larger populations. We call it courage. It's what my species does when conventional solutions aren't enough. The princess felt a wave of complex emotions through her telepathic senses. This human was proposing that his people sacrifice themselves to give her fleet tactical advantages, and his emotional signature showed no deception, no hidden agenda. He genuinely believed that human lives were worth trading for Zephyrian survival. not because humans were expendable, but because protecting innocent civilizations was more important than protecting individual lives. "I cannot ask your people to accept such losses," she said finally. "You're not asking," Marcus replied with a slight smile. "We're volunteering. Princess, there's something about humanity that other species often misunderstand. We're not brave because we don't fear death. We're brave because we fear the wrong things surviving more than we fear dying." Before Lyrelai could respond, urgent alarms began sounding throughout the ship. They rushed back to the main command center, where Admiral Kethavar was coordinating with multiple scout vessels. "The enemy fleet has accelerated beyond previous projections," the Admiral reported telepathically. "They will reach engagement range in less than 4 hours. Additionally, our scouts have detected energy signatures consistent with planet-killer weapons among their larger vessels." The tactical situation had just become exponentially worse. Planet-killer weapons meant these invaders weren't seeking conquest or resources. They intended complete extermination of any civilization they encountered. Every world in Zephyrian space, including the homeworld where billions of civilians lived, was now under direct threat. "Admiral," Marcus said urgently, "we need to implement the dispersal strategy immediately. If those planet killers reach inhabited systems, everything we're fighting to protect will be lost." Lyrelai found herself facing the kind of decision that defined the fate of civilizations. She could maintain conventional tactics and almost certainly lose everything, or she could trust these remarkable humans to sacrifice themselves for the chance of saving her people. "All ships," she announced through the telepathic command network, her mental voice carrying the authority of Imperial command. "Implement Tactical Plan Omega. Human squadrons will break formation and execute dispersal protocols. All Zephyrian vessels will move to assigned ambush positions and prepare for coordinated strikes." Throughout the fleet, human crews received their orders with the kind of calm acceptance that amazed their Zephyrian counterparts. There was no panic, no hesitation, just professional acknowledgement of a dangerous mission that needed to be completed. Commander Park approached the princess with a message tablet in her hand. "Your Highness, the human squadron leaders have submitted a formal request. They want permission to record personal messages for transmission to human space, in case they don't survive the engagement." Lyrelai felt her throat constrict with unexpected emotion. "Permission granted. And Commander, please ensure they know that their courage will be remembered in Zephyrian history for as long as our civilization endures." As the enemy fleet closed to engagement range, Princess Lyrelai watched human vessels break formation and accelerate toward what might be their doom. Each ship carried crews who had volunteered to risk everything for people they barely knew, guided by principles that valued the survival of strangers above their own safety. For the first time in her life, the princess began to understand that true strength had nothing to do with advanced technology or superior abilities. True strength came from the willingness to stand against overwhelming darkness, not because victory was assured, but because some things were worth fighting for regardless of the cost. The first phase of the battle unfolded exactly as Marcus had predicted. The enemy fleet responded to the dispersing human squadrons with mathematical precision, dividing their forces to pursue what appeared to be fleeing vessels. Princess Lyrelai watched from the command center of the Stellar Sovereign as human ships scattered across the star system, each one drawing groups of enemy vessels away from the main formation. "Enemy pursuit groups are moving into ambush zones Alpha through Delta," reported Commander Park, her voice steady despite the obvious tension. "Human squadrons are maintaining optimal separation distances from their pursuers." Admiral Kethavar's telepathic coordination network pulsed with tactical information as Zephyrian heavy cruisers positioned themselves for the coordinated strikes. "All ambush vessels report ready status. Plasma cannon arrays are charged to maximum capacity. We await your command, Princess." Lyrelai felt the weight of command pressing down on her like a physical force. In the tactical displays, she could see human ships pushing their engines beyond safe limits, staying just ahead of enemy pursuit craft that fired continuous streams of unknown energy weapons. Several human vessels already showed damage signatures, their shields weakening under the relentless assault. "Squadron 7 is reporting critical engine damage," announced Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. "They're requesting permission to break off from the engagement." "Negative," came the immediate response from Squadron 7's commander, Captain Williams. His voice crackled through the communication system with static from damaged equipment. "We're maintaining course toward ambush zone Delta. Tell the Admiral we'll get his fish to the net even if we have to crawl there. The princess watched in amazement as the damaged human vessel continued leading its pursuers toward the waiting Zephyrian ambush. Even as secondary explosions began rippling across its hull, the crew could easily have veered away and saved themselves, but they maintained their dangerous course because the mission was more important than their individual survival. Ambush Zone Alpha reports enemy contact in 30 seconds, Admiral Kethvar announced. Human Squadron 3 has successfully drawn 47 enemy vessels into optimal firing position. Execute Ambush Alpha, Lyra Lee commanded. The tactical display erupted with light as hidden Zephyrian vessels opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cannons that could vaporize asteroids focused their combined energy on the pursuing enemy ships. For a moment, it appeared the strategy was working perfectly. Several enemy vessels simply disappeared in brilliant flashes of converted matter. Then the unexpected happened. "Princess," Commander Park called urgently. "The enemy vessels are adapting. They're modifying their hull configurations in real time to absorb our plasma energy. The second volley is having reduced effectiveness." On the tactical display, Lorelei could see enemy ships literally reshaping themselves, their black hulls flowing like liquid metal to create new surface patterns that dispersed Zephyrian weapons fire. Whatever technology these invaders possessed, it operated on principles that neither species fully understood. "Admiral, report on remaining ambush zones," she ordered. "Ambush zones Beta and Gamma are achieving similar results," Kethvar replied, his telepathic signature carrying deep concern. "Initial strikes are effective, but the enemy adapts within moments. Each subsequent engagement yields diminishing returns." Marcus stepped forward, his face grim but determined. "Princess, we need to modify the strategy. The enemy's adaptive technology has a weakness we can exploit, but it will require every human ship to coordinate a simultaneous action." "Explain quickly," she said, watching as more human vessels showed critical damage on the tactical displays. "Their adaptation appears to be reactive rather than predictive," Marcus said rapidly. "They respond to whatever attack pattern they've most recently encountered. If we can coordinate multiple different attack types simultaneously, their adaptation protocols might overload or create vulnerabilities." Admiral Kethvar's mental voice carried skepticism. "Coordination of that complexity would require telepathic link between all vessels. Human ships lack such capability." "No, but we have something else," Marcus replied. He activated his communication system and began broadcasting on all human frequencies. "All human vessels, this is Ambassador Chen. Execute Protocol Omega-7 immediately." "I repeat, Protocol Omega-7. Throughout the scattered human squadrons, ship commanders acknowledged the transmission with crisp professionalism. Lorelei had no idea what Protocol Omega-7 entailed, but she could see immediate changes in human ship movements. Vessels that had been maintaining defensive formations suddenly began executing wildly different maneuvers. Some ships accelerated directly toward enemy vessels in apparent suicide runs. Others began spinning rapidly while firing their weapons in seemingly random directions. Several squadrons formed tight formations and began complex synchronized movements that looked more like aerial dancing than military tactics. "What are they doing?" the princess asked, watching the chaotic display with growing confusion. "Creating maximum tactical chaos," Marcus replied. "Every human ship is now executing completely different attack patterns simultaneously. The enemy adaptation systems won't be able to compensate for multiple unknown variables introduced at the same time." On the tactical display, the results were immediately apparent. Enemy vessels that had been smoothly adapting to Zephyrian weapons fire began showing erratic behavior. Some ships collided with others in their formation as their automated systems tried to process too many different threat patterns simultaneously. Others simply stopped moving altogether, apparently locked in computational loops trying to adapt to contradictory inputs. "All Zephyrian vessels," Lorelei commanded through the telepathic network, "concentrate maximum firepower on enemy ships showing adaptive paralysis. Target their largest vessels first." The combined fleet's coordinated assault achieved devastating results. Enemy ships that had seemed nearly invulnerable moments before now exploded under focused fire from Zephyrian plasma cannons. Within minutes, nearly half the enemy fleet had been destroyed or disabled, but the victory came at a terrible cost. "Princess," Commander Park reported, her voice thick with emotion, "we're receiving casualty reports from human squadrons. 23 vessels have been destroyed. 41 more are reporting critical damage. Total human casualties are estimated at over 8,000 personnel. Lyreley felt the numbers hit her like physical blows. 8,000 humans had died to create the tactical opportunity that saved both fleets. These beings had sacrificed themselves for people they barely knew, following the orders of an ambassador who asked them to risk everything based on theoretical tactical advantages. The surviving enemy vessels are regrouping, Admiral Kethvar reported. They appear to be withdrawing toward the system's edge. However, Princess, our scouts report additional enemy fleets approaching from 3 different vectors. This was merely their advance force. Marcus studied the incoming tactical data with the calm focus that Lyreley had come to associate with human crisis management. Princess, we've learned something crucial about their technology and tactics. If we can get this information to both our home fleets, our civilizations might have a fighting chance against the main invasion force. The princess realized that despite their tactical success, the real battle was just beginning. The enemy possessed technology that could adapt to any conventional attack, forces that numbered in the hundreds of thousands, and an apparent determination to eliminate all sentient life in their path. But they had also learned something important. When humans and Zephyrians worked together, combining telepathic coordination with individual initiative, they could achieve tactical results that neither species could accomplish alone. The question was whether they could apply these lessons on a scale large enough to save entire civilizations. "Admiral," she commanded, "prepare all vessels for strategic withdrawal to defensive positions around the homeworld. We need to transmit everything we've learned to the main fleet and prepare for the real war that's coming." The Imperial Palace on Zephyr Prime had been transformed into a fortress of desperate preparation. Princess Lyreley moved through corridors filled with military personnel from both species. Their combined efforts focused on analyzing the intelligence gathered from the first battle and preparing defenses for the massive enemy fleets approaching from multiple directions. The throne room had become a war planning center, its ancient crystalline walls now covered with holographic displays showing fleet positions, enemy movement patterns, and tactical simulations. Ambassador Marcus Chen stood before the central display, his uniform bearing the scorch marks and fatigue stains of the recent battle, as he briefed the assembled military commanders on humanity's strategic response. "The Human Colonial Federation has mobilized every available vessel," Marcus reported, his voice carrying the weight of exhaustion and determination. "Admiral Harrison is bringing the entire Third Fleet through the Arcturus jump gate. They'll arrive in system within 18 hours, but intelligence suggests the enemy main force will reach us first." Princess Lyreley studied the tactical projections with growing concern. The enemy fleets approaching Zephyr Prime numbered in the thousands, their combined firepower sufficient to reduce entire planets to cosmic dust. Even with human reinforcements, the defensive forces would be outnumbered by more than 10 to 1. Our deep space monitoring stations report similar enemy movements toward human colonies. Admiral Kethvar communicated through the telepathic network. "This appears to be a coordinated extermination campaign, targeting multiple civilizations simultaneously." The scope of the threat was staggering. These mysterious invaders weren't seeking conquest or resources. They were implementing systematic genocide against every sentient species in the galaxy. The realization brought a sobering clarity to their situation. This wasn't a war for territory or political advantage. It was a battle for the right of intelligent life to exist. "Marcus," the princess said, using his personal name for the first time since they'd met, "there's something I need to understand about your species. In all our projections, human survival odds are virtually zero. Your fleets are smaller, your technology less advanced, your colonies more vulnerable. Yet your people continue volunteering for missions that will almost certainly result in their deaths. Why?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, his gaze focused on the tactical displays showing the positions of scattered human squadrons throughout the system. When he spoke, his voice carried a quality that resonated through the chamber's ancient acoustics. "Princess, there's a story from human history about a small group of warriors who stood against an overwhelming invasion force at a place called Thermopylae. They knew they couldn't win. They knew they would all die. But they also knew that their sacrifice would buy time for their civilization to prepare, and their courage would inspire others to keep fighting when things seemed hopeless." He turned to face her directly, and she could see something in his expression that transcended simple determination. "Humans have learned that some battles are worth fighting not because you can win, but because losing while fighting is better than surviving through surrender. When evil is absolute, resistance becomes a moral imperative, regardless of the tactical odds. Admiral Kethvar's telepathic signature carried complex emotions that Lyrelay had never experienced from the veteran commander, surprise mixed with something approaching reverence. You fight for principles rather than survival. This explains much about human tactical behavior. We fight for the future, Marcus corrected gently. Every human who dies protecting Zephyrian civilians creates a chance that somewhere, somehow intelligent life will survive and rebuild. If we can delay these invaders long enough for other civilizations to prepare, if we can learn enough about their weaknesses to pass that information along, then our deaths have meaning beyond ourselves. The princess felt her understanding of these remarkable beings shift once again. She had initially viewed humans as primitive allies of convenience, then as surprisingly capable military partners. Now she began to grasp something deeper about their nature. They possessed a form of courage that was essentially spiritual, a willingness to sacrifice individual survival for abstract concepts like justice and the greater good. There may be another option, she said slowly, an idea forming as she studied the tactical displays. Our scientists have been analyzing the enemy technology we captured from destroyed vessels. Dr. Veltar, please share your findings. The elderly Zephyrian scientist stepped forward, his telepathic signature carrying excitement mixed with apprehension. Princess, the enemy adaptive systems operate through a form of quantum-linked consciousness. Each ship learns from the experiences of all others in real time. This explains their perfect coordination and rapid tactical adaptation. But quantum consciousness systems have theoretical vulnerabilities, Marcus observed, his background in human science complementing Zephyrian research methods. If you could disrupt the quantum links, the entire network would experience cascade failures. Precisely, Dr. Veltar confirmed. However, generating sufficient quantum interference would require a massive coordinated effort across multiple star systems. The energy requirements are enormous, and the timing would need to be perfect down to fractions of seconds. Princess Lyrelay studied the technical specifications with growing excitement. What kind of coordinated effort? Every major population center, every industrial facility, every starship would need to activate specific quantum resonance generators simultaneously, the scientist explained. The interference pattern would propagate at faster than light speeds through quantum entanglement, potentially disrupting enemy systems across vast distances. But the generators would need to be protected during the activation sequence, Admiral Kethvar noted. The enemy will undoubtedly recognize the threat and focus all their firepower on destroying the quantum resonance sites. Marcus stepped closer to the technical displays, his expression intensifying as he absorbed the implications. Princess, this is exactly the kind of mission human forces are designed for. While your people coordinate the technical aspects of the quantum interference, human fleets can provide covering actions. We can create enough tactical chaos to protect the generator sites long enough for the interference pattern to activate. The plan was audacious beyond anything either civilization had ever attempted. It would require perfect coordination between multiple species, precise timing across interstellar distances, and human forces willing to engage in what amounted to extended suicide missions to protect the quantum generators. The activation sequence will take approximately 47 minutes. Dr. Veltar continued. During that time, the generator sites will be completely vulnerable to attack. Any interruption in the quantum resonance pattern will cause the entire system to collapse. 47 minutes, Marcus repeated thoughtfully. Princess human tactical doctrine calls that a forlorn hope, a mission where survival is unlikely but success is essential. We've done it before. Lyrelay realized they were discussing a plan that would ask human forces to hold impossible defensive positions for nearly an hour against overwhelming enemy firepower. Knowing that survival was virtually impossible, but understanding that the fate of multiple civilizations depended on their success. Marcus, I cannot ask your people to accept those odds. You're not asking, he replied with the same steady determination she had come to associate with human moral courage. We're volunteering. Princess, if this quantum interference works, it could save billions of lives across multiple star systems. If it fails, we all die anyway when the enemy fleets reach the populated worlds. Standing in that ancient throne room, surrounded by the military leaders of two civilizations, Princess Lyrelay found herself confronted with the most important decision in galactic history. She could authorize a plan that would almost certainly result in the annihilation of human military forces, or she could watch as both their civilizations were systematically exterminated by an implacable enemy. Admiral Kethvar, Dr. Veltar, begin immediate preparations for quantum interference deployment. Ambassador Chen, please coordinate with your fleet commanders. We have 18 hours to save the galaxy. The quantum resonance generators hummed with barely contained energy across 17 different worlds as Princess Lyrelay watched the final preparations from the command center aboard the Stellar Sovereign. The massive ship hung in orbit above, Zephyr Prime, surrounded by the combined remnants of both fleets arranged in defensive formations that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. Human vessels, their hulls still bearing battle damage from previous engagements, took positions at the most dangerous defensive points around each quantum generator site. Ambassador Marcus Chen had insisted on personally commanding the protection detail for the primary generator on Zephyr Prime, despite Princess Lyrelay's attempts to convince him to coordinate the operation from a safer position. All quantum resonance sites report ready status, announced Dr. Veltar through the telepathic command network. Synchronization protocols are active and energy buildup is proceeding according to specifications. We will reach activation threshold in 37 minutes. The tactical displays showed enemy fleets approaching from 4 different vectors, their formation patterns suggesting they had indeed recognized the threat posed by the quantum generators. The largest enemy concentration was heading directly for Zephyr Prime, while smaller forces moved to attack generator sites on outlying worlds. Enemy main force will reach engagement range in 12 minutes, reported Admiral Kethvar. Advanced scout elements are already beginning attack runs against outer defensive positions. Princess Lyrelay watched as the first wave of enemy vessels opened fire on human defensive squadrons. The humans' tactical response was unlike anything she had ever witnessed in military operations. Instead of maintaining orderly formations and coordinated fire patterns, they seemed to dissolve into individual units, executing completely unpredictable maneuvers. Human Squadron 12 is engaging enemy advance elements, Commander Park announced. They're implementing what they call swarm tactics, every ship operating independently but toward common objectives. On the tactical display, Lyrelay could see human vessels diving and weaving through enemy formations like schools of small fish attacking much larger predators. Some ships flew directly at enemy vessels in apparent suicide runs, only to veer away at the last second while firing concentrated bursts at critical systems. Others moved in seemingly random patterns that somehow managed to confuse enemy targeting computers. The effect on the enemy forces was remarkable. Ships that had previously adapted quickly to Zephyrian tactics now seemed unable to compensate for the chaotic unpredictability of human combat methods. Enemy vessels collided with each other trying to track multiple targets moving in contradictory patterns while their adaptive systems struggled to process the apparently random human behaviors. "This is Captain Rodriguez aboard the Defiant," crackled through the communication system. "We're taking heavy damage but maintaining position around Generator Site Alpha. Enemy adaptive protocols are definitely confused by our tactical patterns. Recommend all human units continue maximum chaos protocols." Marcus's voice came through the command channel with characteristic, calm determination. "All human vessels, this is Ambassador Chen. Execute Protocol Pandemonium. Create maximum tactical confusion around all generator sites. Make the enemy think we've lost our minds." Throughout the defensive perimeter, human ships began implementing even more outrageous tactical behaviors. Some vessels flew in figure-8 patterns while firing in all directions. Others formed temporary formations that immediately dissolved into apparently random movements. Several squadrons began coordinating complex aerobatic displays that somehow managed to provide covering fire for damaged allies while confusing enemy tracking systems. "The enemy adaptive algorithms appear to be overloading," Dr. Veltar reported with obvious excitement. "Human tactical unpredictability is creating computational loops in their coordination networks. Enemy efficiency is dropping significantly." But the cost was becoming apparent on the casualty reports. Human vessels, already damaged from previous battles, were sustaining terrible losses as they maintained their desperate defensive actions. Ships that should have retreated to repair facilities instead continued fighting with failing systems and wounded crews. "Princess," Commander Park called urgently. "We're receiving a transmission from Captain Williams aboard the Intrepid. His ship has lost life support and weapons systems, but he's requesting permission to continue the mission." Through the communication system, Captain Williams' voice was barely audible over the sound of emergency alarms and secondary explosions. "Command, this is Williams. We can still maneuver, and we still have ramming speed. Request permission to engage the enemy dreadnought approaching Generator Site Alpha." Lyreley felt her throat constrict with emotion as she realized what the human captain was proposing. His ship was dying. His crew was dying. But he wanted to use his vessel as a missile to protect the quantum generator that might save both civilizations. "Permission granted, Captain," Marcus replied immediately. "Godspeed, Intrepid." On the tactical display, the princess watched as the crippled human vessel accelerated toward an enemy dreadnought nearly 10 times its size. The Intrepid had no weapons remaining and minimal life support, but her crew drove her forward with the kind of desperate courage that had become synonymous with human military action. The collision, when it came, was spectacular and heartbreaking. The Intrepid struck the enemy dreadnought amidships, her hull cracking like an eggshell while her reactor went critical. The resulting explosion consumed both vessels in a brief star that illuminated the entire defensive perimeter. "Direct hit on enemy dreadnought," Admiral Kethvar reported, his telepathic signature carrying profound respect. "The vessel has been completely destroyed. Captain Williams and his crew have saved Generator Site Alpha." Similar acts of heroism were occurring throughout the defensive network as human crews sacrificed themselves to protect the quantum resonance generators. The tactical chaos they created was indeed confusing enemy adaptive systems, but each success cost lives that could never be replaced. "Quantum resonance generators are approaching critical synchronization," Dr. Veltar announced. 15 minutes to activation. All sites must maintain protection for 15 more minutes." Princess Lyreley realized that 15 minutes might as well be 15 hours given the rate of human casualties. The enemy was adapting to their chaos tactics, and the defensive perimeter was collapsing under overwhelming firepower. "Marcus," she said through the communication system, "your people have already done more than anyone could ask. Give the order to withdraw to minimum safe distance. We can try to complete the activation sequence with whatever protection remains." "Negative, Princess," Marcus replied immediately. "Human forces will maintain defensive positions until quantum resonance activation is complete, or all vessels are destroyed. We didn't come this far to give up 15 minutes before saving the galaxy." Through the tactical displays, she could see the desperate battle continuing around each generator site. Human ships that should have been space debris continued fighting with nothing but emergency power and the determination of crews who refused to abandon their mission. 10 minutes to activation," Dr. Veltar called out. "Quantum resonance patterns are stabilizing. Enemy forces are concentrating maximum firepower against the generators." The final phase of the battle had begun, and Princess Lyreley watched in amazement as human forces somehow continued to hold positions that should have been overrun hours ago. Whatever these remarkable beings possessed, it was something that transcended technology, training, or tactical advantages. 5 minutes to activation. All quantum resonance generators are maintaining synchronization. Human defensive forces are. Dr. Veltar paused, his telepathic signature carrying wonder and disbelief. They are still holding all primary positions. The impossible was happening. Against overwhelming odds, with technology inferior to their enemies, human forces were succeeding in the most desperate defensive action in galactic history. In 5 minutes, the quantum interference would either save multiple civilizations or fail completely. But it would fail only if the last human defenders fell in the next 300 seconds. Princess Lyreley found herself holding her breath as the final countdown began, watching these extraordinary beings write their names in the history of the galaxy with their blood and their courage.